Standing waist-deep in my own pond at dawn, chainsaw engine screaming, I'm tearing down unauthorized no trespassing markers that materialized during the night on land I legally own. Gasoline vapors mingle with the morning fog as I slice through metal stakes I absolutely never installed. 8 months of grueling labor, $67,000 for my family inheritance, 47 acres of neglected marshland converted into pristine waters where children splash and families cast their lines. Then arrives this platinum-haired homeowners association. Chairwoman in her spotless white luxury sedan, accompanied by a county officer. She declares my entire pond is association property, not merely a portion but every square foot. Claims I've been encroaching for months while observing my daily toil. My composure nearly shattered. However, this demanding neighbor failed to anticipate one thing. I possessed every document, every authorization, every critical paper that would transform her authority, grab into judicial disaster. How would you respond if someone attempted to confiscate your passion project? Comment below sharing your location and your own association conflict experiences. 6 months earlier before this confrontation, I was Marcus Del Vecchio, 52, recently separated and frustrated beyond measure. 23 years installing electrical systems in Central Valley, California, residing in a cramped apartment governed by an association featuring 27 pages of regulations covering everything, from entrance mat hues to approved window covering tints. My marriage collapsed the same week my grandfather's contracting company finally transferred ownership. She retained the residence, the watercraft, and my peace of mind. I kept my equipment, a work truck, and $180,000 from the estate. Settlement, more capital than this blue-collar descendant of Italian immigrants had ever possessed. Browsing remote property advertisements at 2 a.m, powered by inexpensive bourbon and determination, I discovered it. 47 acres in Northern California featuring what the advertisement optimistically described as a recreational pond. The photographs resembled an ecological crime scene. Murky water resembling melted chocolate, deceased marsh plants, and a fishing platform that had clearly surrendered to decay decades earlier. The stench assaulted my senses from 50 yards during my initial inspection. Stagnant liquid combined with decomposing vegetation and possibly deceased wildlife. Yet beneath the catastrophe, I recognized the foundation of something magnificent. Historical county records indicated this was a popular angling destination in the 1980s. Before a recluse named Edward Kowalski allowed deterioration for generations, I submitted $127,000. Won the auction that very afternoon. The transformation, the initial 4 months nearly destroyed me physically. I leased dredging machinery that roared like mechanical demons, working sunrise to sunset extracting decades of accumulated sediment from the depths. Diesel exhaust and rotting organic matter became my constant companions. My hands resembled raw meat from perpetual moisture exposure, but gradually, miraculously, the water clarified. Critical knowledge that proved invaluable. Circulating water maintains cleanliness. I installed solar-powered aeration systems preventing algae proliferation while generating oxygen for aquatic life. One circulation apparatus surpasses thousands spent on chemical treatments. By month 6, I had 8 feet of crystal clear water. Bass appeared seemingly from nowhere. Fish locate quality habitat like tracking dogs find their quarry. Weekend visitors started requesting permission for their children to swim in the shallow beach area I'd constructed. The sound of tires on gravel became my preferred audio, evidence that people genuinely wanted to experience something I'd created. Marcus Santos, a local fishing instructor, brought paying customers on weekends. Susan Chang from the regional high school began transporting biology classes for water quality analysis. For the first time since my separation, I felt I was constructing something meaningful instead of merely repairing other people's electrical problems. Enter the antagonist. That's when trouble arrived in designer eyewear. Barbara Kowalski, 59, with rigidly styled platinum hair and the entitled demeanor that explains why some choose isolation. She arrived in her immaculate white luxury vehicle on a Tuesday morning acting proprietorial, clipboard prepared, ready to scrutinize my existence. I was replacing dockboards when her car door slammed, not closed. Slammed like she was already furious about my presence. She marched across my property boundary without invitation, expensive footwear clicking on my gravel like an ominous march. "Pardon me," she announced. "Didn't ask. I need to confirm your authorization status for this water management activity." I straightened, gripping my power tool defensively. "Ma'am, this is private land. You require permission to be here." Her laughter could have corroded metal. "Oh, sweetheart, that's your misconception. This entire water system falls under Highland Ridge HOA environmental jurisdiction. I'm Barbara Kowalski, association chairwoman, and you've been operating without proper clearance." She produced documentation thick as a metropolitan phone directory. Official headers, legal stamps, everything official looking. My blood chilled as she smiled predatorily. "Effective immediately, you're violating community water management regulations. Cease all operations or face penalties beginning at $2,500. She deposited a citation on my dock like a challenge. "This is merely the beginning, Mr. Del Vecchio." Watching her luxury vehicle retreat down my driveway, I understood this wasn't simply a troublesome neighbor. This was warfare. The bureaucratic assault Barbara's opening strategy hit like administrative warfare. Within 48 hours, 3 separate government departments swarmed my property like insects on spilled sweets. Monday dawn. Wildlife inspector at 7 responding to complaints about unauthorized habitat alteration. Tuesday. Water quality officials dispatching an inexperienced inspector to lecture me about disrupting protected wetland environments. Wednesday. County development arriving with documentation thick enough to be armor plating. Each inspector appeared more perplexed than lost tourists. The wildlife official kept scratching his head. "Sir, this is the cleanest pond I've examined in this county. What exactly should I be citing?" Yet they all repeated the same refrain. Anonymous complaints from a concerned Highland Ridge resident claiming I was devastating sensitive habitat. Diesel truck engines became my morning alarm, announcing another day of governmental harassment. What infuriated me most, I was following every regulation. Dredging authorizations, water rights documentation, environmental studies costing $4,000. But Princess Barbara was weaponizing bureaucracy, filing complaint after complaint. Knowing even unfounded allegations require official investigation, County Development Inspector Rodriguez eventually confided, "Between us, the woman filing these complaints understands nothing about environmental regulations. She keeps rambling about community water resources like you stole the municipal pool. Time to counterattack. The research I spent Saturday buried in county records, surrounded by archive boxes smelling of old tobacco and frustrated hopes. Fluorescent illumination hummed overhead like irritated insects, while I excavated decades of property documentation, searching for Barbara's vulnerabilities. What I discovered was explosive. Edward Kowalski, Barbara's deceased uncle, had constructed this pond in 1962 as part of gravel extraction operations. Original permits existed right there in faded duplicate copies, complete with environmental assessments from the Kennedy administration. No protected wetlands, no endangered species, just an artificial settling basin for mining sediment. But here's the beautiful irony. When Highland Ridge developed in 1998, they'd completely skipped watershed impact analysis. 25 years of their storm drainage, lawn chemicals, and road salt had been contaminating my pond, creating the toxic conditions that eliminated the fish population. Essential knowledge. California mandates environmental impact studies for any construction affecting water drainage. Skip this requirement and you're liable for cleanup expenses potentially decades later. One missing permit can cost millions in remediation. I photocopied everything, then filed counter-complaints that would make Barbara's head spin. The discovery within days. Government inspectors invaded Barbara's pristine neighborhood, examining storm drains, testing runoff, asking very specific questions about environmental compliance. Revenge tasted better than my grandmother's pasta sauce. Friday afternoon, my phone rang. "Mr. Del Vecchio, this is Jennifer Patterson from County Development. We need you and Mrs. Kowalski at a boundary clarification session Tuesday. There's substantial confusion about property boundaries in our records." My stomach sank. What kind of confusion? The 1962 survey conflicts with the 1998 subdivision map. Different boundaries, different water rights. We cannot process additional permits until this resolves. I disconnected with sweaty palms. Boundary disputes meant legal paralysis. Potentially years of frozen development while attorneys profited, arguing over survey markers from the Nixon era. But when I consulted Marcus Santos, the veteran fishing guide simply chuckled. "Friend, you're thinking like prey. If they're confused about where your property ends, they're also confused about where her authority begins. This woman just handed you ammunition." Community support that weekend, I organized every document like preparing for combat. Permits, photographs, environmental reports, evidence that my pond restoration was the best development for this watershed in decades. Monday evening, I received intelligence from an unexpected source. Thomas Martinez, who'd performed electrical work in Highland Ridge, stopped by with beverages and information. "Marcus, you won't believe this. That Kowalski woman's been convening emergency HOA sessions, trying to get the board to approve $25,000 for legal consultation. Half the homeowners are questioning why their fees might increase because of some pond they've never seen." Barbara's own neighbors were beginning to question her expensive fixation with my property. The boundary session ended with legal uncertainty, but Barbara had a contingency plan targeting my finances and credibility. Within a week, she launched a social media campaign that would impress political strategists. Concerned Citizens Against Illegal Development appeared on Facebook overnight, complete with professional graphics and photographs telling smooth falsehoods. The images were propaganda masterworks, my dredging equipment positioned beside protected wetland signs that appeared overnight like toxic vegetation. Muddy water photographs from week 1 labeled as ongoing environmental damage. The comment sections erupted with manufactured outrage. Generic profile images named concerned parent Jennifer and longtime resident Robert, posting identical complaints about outsiders destroying our community. Natural pressure. The economic pressure struck hard. Martinez Electrical, where I'd purchased supplies for 20 years, suddenly required double deposits due to regulatory concerns. Equipment rental companies started demanding cash advance, plus environmental liability insurance that didn't exist. My bank froze the construction loan immediately. I sat in my truck outside the hardware store, watching the proprietor duck behind his counter, avoiding eye contact. The smell of my own defeat mixed with exhaust fumes and the bitter taste of questioning whether this battle was worth losing everything. That evening, I stood on my deck listening to aerators hum peacefully while bass jumped in golden sunset illumination. For the first time since my separation, I considered surrender. That's when I heard voices carrying across the water. 3 families had parked by the access road, children running with fishing equipment, parents arranging folding chairs like they belonged. I approached expecting to politely request they leave. Instead, Maria Gonzalez from the neighboring town thanked me with tears. "Mr. Del Vecchio, my children begged to come here every weekend. They've never caught fish before, and my daughter actually stopped using her phone to watch a sunset. Her husband Carlos grabbed my hand like we were old friends. Brother, this place is pure magic. Clean water, healthy fish, safe for families. Whatever you're doing, don't stop." That's when the strategy crystallized. The counterattack Saturday morning, I posted a simple announcement. Pond Restoration Educational Day. Free family event. Learn about water conservation. I contacted Marcus Santos, Susan Chang, and every family who'd been visiting regularly. 53 people appeared. Parents drove from distant towns. Marcus demonstrated catch and release while Susan explained how aeration systems create healthy ecosystems. Children who normally lived attached to smartphones spent 3 hours learning to bait hooks and identify fish species. The sound of children's laughter echoing across clear water was better than any revenge fantasy. But the real victory was spotting that familiar white luxury sedan parked on the property line, engine running, windows tinted. She sat there like surveillance, watching families enjoy something she'd tried to destroy. Late afternoon, Martha Pierce, 78-year-old retired librarian whose family had lived here since forever, approached with a weathered photo album. "Young man, I recognize this pond from my childhood. My father helped excavate it back in '62. She opened to a faded black and white photograph showing dozens celebrating the grand opening. But look at the background. My heart stopped. Behind the 1963 crowd stood a large wooden sign. Future site of Highland Ridge Development. Coming 1995. And there, barely visible among onlookers, was a young woman with distinctive platinum hair, arms crossed, scowling at the camera. That's young Barbara Kowalski, Martha continued, tapping the photo with her aged finger. Edward's niece. When her father sold the development rights in '95, she had a tantrum heard throughout the state capitol. Said this pond should stay in the family forever, that outsiders would ruin everything her uncle built. The pieces aligned. This wasn't about environmental protection or HOA authority. This was a 30-year family grudge, cultivated through decades of watching her pond from a distance, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim what she'd always believed was rightfully hers. Legal warfare. The certified mail arrived Tuesday morning like a judicial explosive in my mailbox. Thick envelope, state capitol return address, the kind of official correspondence that makes your stomach clench before you even open it. Masters, Craig and Partners, was embossed across letterhead. These weren't small-town attorneys charging reasonable rates. This was an elite firm representing half the developers in Northern California. The cease and desist letter read like warfare written in legal code. According to their investigation, I was trespassing on designated common area amenities belonging to Highland Ridge Homeowners Association. They demanded I immediately halt all unauthorized improvements and pay $50,000 in damages for diminished property values. $50,000. I read it 3 times while my coffee turned cold and bitter. Here's what made it brilliantly terrifying. They weren't claiming I'd stolen the pond. They were arguing my restoration work had improved HOA property without permission, making me liable for unauthorized construction costs, like I'd renovated someone else's kitchen and now owed them rent. Finding an ally, my attorney shopping expedition lasted exactly 4 phone calls. Quality lawyers either had conflicts of interest or suddenly developed scheduling problems lasting until the next ice age. Peterson from Anderson Law gave me brutal honesty over crackling phone lines. Marcus, Masters represents 3 major development companies here. I take your case, I lose half my practice. You understand? I understood perfectly. Barbara had hired legal power that made small-town lawyers anxious. By Saturday, I was camping in the county law library, surrounded by books smelling of judicial defeat and broken dreams. California property law makes advanced physics look simple, but I discovered something beautiful buried in civil code. HOA claims to water rights require dual recording, county level and state water resources board. Miss either filing and your claim is legally worthless. I pulled every document related to Highland Ridge. The 1998 boundary adjustment, giving HOA authority over my pond, was recorded with the county, but never filed with the state water board. In California, that's like buying half a lottery ticket. Looks official until you try to collect. I was organizing this ammunition when Marcus Santos called with information that changed everything. Friend, you need to meet Harold Brennan. Retired judge, lives in the next county. Spent 40 years handling property disputes. Guy hates legal bullies more than spoiled sushi. The judge, Judge Brennan, answered his door looking like Hollywood-ordered distinguished magistrate. White beard, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, calm authority that made you stand straighter instinctively. He read Master's letter while chuckling like someone told him an excellent lawyer joke. Son, I've watched this firm operate for 20 years. They're masters at intimidating people who can't afford to fight back. But they've made 3 amateur mistakes in this letter that would embarrass a paralegal. He pointed to specific paragraphs with a finger that had signed thousands of court orders. They're claiming damages without proving ownership, demanding payment without establishing jurisdiction, and threatening litigation without proper legal foundation. This isn't strategy, it's expensive intimidation wrapped in Latin phrases. The judge leaned back, eyes twinkling with mischief from 4 decades of watching overconfident lawyers step on legal landmines. Mr. Del Vecchio, how would you feel about turning their intimidation into our counterattack? Because I know exactly how to make masters. Craig and Partners regret taking this case. He pulled out a yellow legal pad, already sketching what resembled a battle plan. Financial forensics Judge Brennan's counterattack started with something I never expected: financial investigation. Son, when someone throws expensive lawyers at a simple property dispute, follow the money. Always follow the money. 3 days later, surrounded by HOA financial statements in the judge's kitchen, we hit information that made my head spin. Highland Ridge was financially devastated, not just tight on cash, completely insolvent. $340,000 behind on infrastructure bonds specifically for storm. Water management systems they'd promised homeowners but never constructed. They'd been juggling payments like a circus performer, using resident fee increases and creative accounting to avoid insolvency. But the real bombshell was buried in their original development contracts: legal obligation to provide recreational amenities, including a community pond with an estimated construction cost of $600,000. My coffee mug hit the table hard enough to rattle the windows. Judge Brennan chuckled at my expression. Now you see the game. They never planned to build that pond, too expensive, too complicated. But if they can steal your restored pond and call it an existing HOA amenity, they satisfy their legal requirements without spending a penny. The scheme was beautiful in its corrupt simplicity. Let some unfortunate person buy the property at auction, spend months and thousands improving it, then swoop in with legal claims once the hard work was finished. My $67,000 in restoration costs would solve their $600,000 problem. I found the smoking gun in HOA meeting minutes from 2 years prior. Faded ink, but crystal clear intent. Board exploring cost-effective amenity solutions. Barbara's handwritten notes in the margins were barely legible. Del Vecchio property acquisition target identified. She'd been stalking my property since before I even knew it existed. This is straight-up fraud, I said, feeling anger replace confusion for the first time in weeks. Attempted fraud, the judge corrected, tapping the evidence with his pen, with documentary proof of premeditation. But here's what changes everything. They need your pond more than you need to avoid this fight. He spread financial documents across his table like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Barbara's HOA is facing infrastructure payments they can't make, resident lawsuits over amenities they haven't delivered, and property values that will crater if homeowners discover the truth. Without your pond, they're looking at bankruptcy or fee increases that'll make residents revolt. The power had completely flipped. I wasn't some victim defending his property. I was holding cards that could save or destroy an entire development. So what's our strategy? I asked. Judge Brennan's grin could have illuminated the state capitol. We stop playing defense and go full offense. Quiet title action to settle ownership permanently. Countersuits for harassment, defamation, and business interference. Property tax reimbursement since they claim to own land you've been paying taxes on. But his final suggestion was pure genius. And we mail copies of their financial records to every homeowner in Highland Ridge. Let them discover why their HOA chairwoman is spending their money on lawyers instead of fixing potholes. Nothing destroys a neighborhood dictator faster than their own people learning the truth. Building the coalition Judge Brennan's kitchen became our war room. Within a week, it resembled mission control for an operation involving property law instead of rocket science. The legal strategy session lasted 6 hours and consumed enough coffee to fuel a cross-country trucker. The judge mapped our multi-pronged attack with the precision of a chess master planning checkmate in 12 moves. Primary objective: quiet title action to settle ownership definitively. Secondary targets: harassment, defamation, intentional interference with business. Nuclear option: criminal referral for attempted fraud. He tapped each item on his yellow legal pad like a general briefing special forces. The best defense against bullies is overwhelming offense, and we're about to become very offensive. Martha Pierce became our historical weapons specialist. At 78, she had more connections than a telephone switchboard and twice the determination. Her call to the regional newspaper yielded immediate interest. Reporters love underdog stories, especially when the antagonist wears designer eyewear and drives a luxury sedan. "Honey, I've been waiting 60 years for someone to knock the Kowalski family down a peg," she said while organizing documents that smelled like decades of careful storage. "That woman's been acting like she owns this county since she learned to walk in expensive shoes." Thomas Martinez brought intelligence worth more than gold. The contractor had wired half of Highland Ridge and overheard enough board meetings to write a book about HOA dysfunction. Marcus, they're hemorrhaging money. Deferred maintenance for 3 years. Roads cracking like broken eggshells, storm drains that couldn't handle a light drizzle. Barbara keeps talking about legal expenses requiring fee increases. But nobody knows she's spending their money trying to steal your pond. Susan Chang provided scientific ammunition that would obliterate environmental claims. Her water quality tests showed my restoration had transformed the entire watershed. Healthy habitat, where toxic conditions had reigned for decades. Marcus Santos became our economic warfare specialist. His fishing guide